Although New France had been enjoying a period of relative peace since the signature of the Peace of Montreal in 1701 and the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, the prospect of renewed hostilities led the authorities to build forts to defend the huge territory. In Montreal, the heart of this defensive network, stone fortifications were erected to protect the city. Carpenters, blacksmiths, sawyers, locksmiths, carters, day laborers, and soldiers all joined in this work. Not to mention stonecutters and masonry contractors, such as Dominique Janson de la Palme.
Well now, I'll work a bit more and call it a day. At this rate, my men and me will soon be done with our undertaking. What a task, my friend. Been slugging away more than 20 years already. Since 1717, actually. Little after Gaspard Chosgros de Léry, the king's chief engineer in Nouvelle-France, set foot on the territory. He was sent here to design fortification worthy of the name. The stock it built to fend off Iroquois' raid was of no more use. Chosgros observes as much.
The bastion is little more than a flimsy perimeter of stakes, many of which are rotten. The inhabitants have cleared several openings, and none of the doors are in any condition to be barred. The English could easily take this city in its present state.
Clear as day, that's the threat looming over Montreal at this juncture. It's all well and good to be in peacetime, but you've got to reckon on the great numbers of English settled down south. If the English take a notion to attack Montreal, they will likely sail across Lac Champlain and up the Richelieu. They will have rapids to run, portage to bear, and a river to reckon with. Not the kind of voyage we want to drag big cannons along. So we don't have to fear a siege as such. But we better be good and ready to fend off hundreds of soldiers armed with rifles. That's why we are erecting a great stone wall right round the city. More than 2 stories high. There are lots of loopholes along the parapets, and the way the bastions are set afford our soldiers plenty of firepower. Beside the postern reserved for soldiers, there are 8 large doors, not so many bordering the countryside, just one on each side to link the city to the outskirts. There's the Récollet door, the Saint-Laurent door, the Quebec door. But there's more down by the river's edge, a gigantic construction project that provides work for everyone. Thought it makes other grumble something fierce. Like when the kings ordered the citizen to pitch in with labors and up taxes to cover expenses to boot. Even the suspicions had no choice but to kick in. There's the beating of the retreat and the evening bell. I have just enough time to mortar these last joints before the soldiers bar the city doors for the night.
In the early 19th century, Montreal no longer feared war. By then, the fortifications had become an impediment to economic development. It was time to demolish them. A promising future awaited with access to the river. It was also a golden age for construction. New streets, new buildings, and new houses were built, such as the one stonemason Joseph Fournier was building on newly cleared Saint-Augustin Street, which is present-day McGill Street.
It'll be a good house. Solid. The owner will get a good rent for the apartments. There's no lack of work anyways. There are construction sites all over town now they've decided to demolish the fortifications. In any event, they were never used. We saw when the English hove to off Montreal, armed to the teeth. Right off, we knew the wall wouldn't withstand a single cannon volley. Not much better than a garden wall, an officer had advised Montcalm. Governor Vaudreuil had known as much too. He'd preferred to surrender without firing a shot, rather than get shot at. He wanted to prevent the city from being plundered and its citizens killed, like in Quebec the year before. The surrender of Montreal on September 8th, 1760, signaled the definitive end of Nouvelle-France. Walls offered no more sense of security when the Americans took aim at them 15 years later. In the end, the walls didn't do much good, and they were falling into ruin. might as well level them. That's what was finally decided a few years back. 3 commissioners were tasked with overseeing the works. That's why we call any sort of cleanup the commissioner's plan. And since then, we've been knocking them down, landscaping the space cleared and the downtown area. We've laid out new streets, like the one along the river. Commissaire Street is what it's called, after those commissioners. We're lengthening other streets, like Notre-Dame, towards the townships that are growing too. We're building a new market on the site of the old Vaudreuil Château with the Nelson column. And Champ de Mars, the city's first public park. Then, we use the retrieved stones to reinforce and build buildings, warehouses, houses, you name it. Yep, there have been lots of changes since. Others to come too, I'd chance a guess. Especially with those steamboats we see more and more often on the river. There's still plenty of honest work for the next few years. But for the time being, I'll just finish this here house.
Although the fortifications have definitely disappeared from Montreal's landscape, archaeological digs have revealed that the ruins remain, buried under public spaces and in building basements. The City of Montreal, in collaboration with the Ministère de la Culture, des Communications et de la Condition Féminine du Québec, develops interpretation and appreciation programs for these ruins, all found in the historic Old Montreal borough. Étienne Dufour keeps busy setting their markers.
It's fascinating to see all that's hidden beneath our feet, attesting to our history. At least here, we'll see what there is to see. These granite slabs I'm setting, light or dark gray, will show what archaeologists have found here, having identified the foundations of the old stone fortifications that once surrounded the city. It also helps preserve them, as the vestiges are still there, right underneath. Ground markings like that can be found elsewhere in Old Montreal. There are a few on Gosford and Notre-Dame streets, and on Bon Secours, just north of Notre-Dame. There are also a few set along de la Commune Street, between Saint-Hubert and Berry Streets. That's where the Quebec Bastion stood at the time. And near Jacques-Cartier Square, which marks the right periphery of the government door through which visiting dignitaries entered Montreal. There are also a few on Place Royale. That's where the market door afforded direct access to the city's public square. It must have been a busy door on a Friday, seeing as how, back then, it was the week's only market day. On McGill Street, near St. Paul and Notre-Dame streets, they've added some quite interesting interpretation aids. 3 structures here give a very good idea of the expanse and especially the height of the scarp, what they used to call the wall. The Champ de Mars side, that's a sight to see. For that's where they haven't covered over the vestiges unearthed by archaeologists. You can see a complete section of the front of the fortifications, the scarp, the counterscarp, and the ditch for the 2 bastions. It gives an idea of the scale of the ramparts. They must have been impressive, considering they surrounded the city from McGill to Berry Streets and from de la Commune to Saint-Antoine. Vestiges of the fortified city can be seen in situ, as they say, and some are even found inside certain buildings, such as the Pointe-à-Calière Museum. In the crypt of the Bon Secours Church, we go even further back in time. Traces of the stakes from the wooden stockades are conserved there. It's truly fascinating that all these vestiges remain to testify to the city's early days and the life of our ancestors. Many other traces can be found in Old Montreal. Ground markings indicate the remains of buildings as well, recalling other important moments revived from our history.